It looks like everyone who was in the waiting room has made their way in, which means I get to officially welcome you to our 2025 information sessions for the Alt Protein Project. And I'm just really excited to see all of you here, knowing that you have some interest in exploring our community. So the goal for this next hour is really just to explore the Alt Protein Project, seeing how it can fit into your university and how you can join the community to become an alt protein champion as a student and, of course, throughout the rest of your career. So, in the meantime, it looks like most of you do have your name already listed on your profile, but if you'd like to drop in the chat where you're all coming in from, whether that be your university or your city, I would love to know what sort of representation we have here. As you're doing that, just to kind of get us warmed up, I would love to just get everybody thinking about alternative proteins and you know, kind of the main reason why we're here. I'd love to know, what animal product do you think will be the hardest to replicate with alternative protein technology? And the reason why I'm starting off with a challenge and not like a success is because in many ways, that's what you all would be helping to do, whether that be as scientists or business people or policymakers. So if that's a certain cut of meat, if that is a certain type of cheese, what do you think will be the most challenging in order to replicate? Well, while you are thinking about that, I will kind of get us prepped for what is going on in this next hour. So as I said before, you know, this is for our 2025 application cycle. For those of you who have not met me yet, my name is Nathan Ahlgrim, and I am the Senior Academic Community Manager at GFI. And that just means that I have the privilege of working directly with students like you across the globe as they work within the Alt Protein Project to help grow their universities into engines of education, research, and innovation in the alternative protein space. I am joined on this call by at least two of my fantastic colleagues. I think I saw a couple other names come up, but at least the two that I am 100% aware of is Hannah and Asia, who are our fantastic academic community specialists. They help run this group or this community as well as directly mentor some groups. I'll be talking more about the mentorship opportunities in a bit. So if anything comes up, you have questions, please drop that in the chat. They will be able to help me kind of figure out if I need to address those questions in the moment or we can wait until the end. And on that note, just so you know what to expect, I really only plan to spend about half of our time together presenting information on the Alt Protein Project because I'm a firm believer that honestly the most useful information is going to be the specific questions that you have. So I'll start by introducing the Alt Protein Project and the Good Food Institute, for those of you who are less familiar with what we do here. I'll talk about the criteria that we have for our program, go over some pointers for our application, and highlight part of what makes our program special. So after that, we will have plenty of time for Q&A, and you can ask those questions in the chat at any time, making sure, since I have such wonderful help, they'll make sure that I address it at the end. And before we get going, I want to acknowledge that there is about to be a lot of words on these slides. I actually spent a few years teaching in college classes. I typically try to avoid text-heavy slides, but I want this to be kind of a lasting resource that you can come back to. We're going to be posting this on our YouTube page as well. All I'm saying this for is basically don't feel like you need to read all of the information on the slides. I'll do my best to explain it as well. So you also don't need to worry about taking notes. Just kind of have this be a conversation starter to help your brainstorming process along the way. So to start off with the big question of what the Alt Protein Project even is, I do kind of want to frame this in the organization that hosts it, the Good Food Institute. So for those of you who are not familiar, we are a 501c3 nonprofit. I am coming from the team in the United States, and we're dedicated to developing the roadmap for a sustainable, secure, and just protein supply. We are funded entirely by philanthropy, and our generous donors allow us to work towards this vision in 3 areas of focus. I am part of the science and technology team, where in addition to the Alt Protein project, we work to advance foundational open access research in alternative proteins and create that thriving training and education ecosystem. Our corporate engagement team partners with companies and investors around the globe to drive investment, accelerate innovation, and scale the supply chain. And our policy team advocates for fair policy and public research funding for alternative proteins. And I'll speak more on this later, but one of our greatest strengths as an organization is the fact that we have a network of international affiliates, and that allows us to directly address the conditions and needs of people and governments all across the globe, because we know that crops grown, political environments, and just the diversity of food cultures would make it impossible for us to really work on a global food system level if we tried to do everything the same way in all places. But really what our work comes down to is our primary theory of change, recognizing that the current meat, egg, and dairy production is frankly unsustainable. It's a key driver of climate change, environmental devastation, and many other problems that we're facing today. We also know that it's been really hard to get people to change their eating habits. Per capita meat consumption globally is continuing to rise, let alone the population itself. So instead of asking people to change their behavior, which we have found is almost a losing proposition, what we are doing is changing the default option by giving them the same foods they love, but made in a better way, and with the end goal of making those products as, if not more, delicious, affordable, and accessible. Now, I won't be going into the science of alternative proteins here, really just to highlight how we define alternative proteins. If you are new to the space or you just want to build your knowledge, we have an almost endless encyclopedia of informational resources that you can dig into on our website, gfi.org. We also have a free online course, The Protein Transition, that can help you get started in understanding these fundamental principles. But we define alternative proteins as products that replicate animal meat, eggs, or dairy that are made either from plant-based ingredients, cultivated from animal cells, or used or produced through fermentation of microbial hosts, and sometimes a blend of all three. And before I really dig into the Alt Protein project, I just want to point GFI's unique position in this industry and in the ecosystem more broadly. As I already mentioned, everything we do is open access, which really is a unique position in this field. Many analyses similar to what we put out cost literally thousands of dollars, and that always blows my mind when I see what we are able to do, because we're really all about facilitating the industry as a whole. And we also focus on the areas of most pressing need. That's why we have resources like our solutions database, where we're pointing scientists and business people to the areas that we have found through our analyses are kind of the biggest bottlenecks towards getting the alt protein ecosystem to where we are. And of course, we just take a big picture perspective, recognizing that it is not just one achievement, it's not just one technology that is needed for this industry, it really is a collection of all of them. All of that brings me to the Alt Protein project. And that is part of the big picture perspective, because we know that universities are the engines of innovation. And over the past few years, we know from experience working with students like you that universities are developed and shaped by motivated and mission-driven students. That's why the Alt Protein project exists, and I'm pretty sure that's why you are all here today. So as you'll see here, we have 5 primary objectives that we organize our student activity around. The 2 on the outside are those that you can think of as kind of more common student initiatives. One, just generating general awareness of alternative proteins, because it is still a new field. Many people do not know about it as a technology or as a solution to anything from climate concerns to animal welfare or the like. and building a thriving community, both personal, so you can hang out with like-minded people, and professional, so you can get in contact with potential future employers. But the three on the inside are really core to what sets the Alt Protein project apart. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But we have groups focusing directly on education within their university, up to and including creating net new 4-credit, fully accredited courses, some often the first in their university, engaging in their own research, whether it be student or faculty-led, and working directly in the innovation sphere. Some students have spun off their own companies, others have worked directly with the industry in their area. And we started small. In 2020, we started with a pilot cohort of 5 universities, and now we are at 66 across 21 countries. We don't even have the space to put all logos on a map anymore. We have grown so much, which is incredibly exciting to me. And of course, the reason why we're here today is because we're looking to grow even more. I wanted to give a really brief snapshot of the different things that our groups do. And this really is just a high-level explanation of what's been going on every 6 months. One of the fantastic colleagues I have on here, Hannah, was the one who led the effort to kind of consolidate everybody's impact into this report. So just as an example, we have almost 1,000 active members, more than 20 courses, programs, and modules initiated by our students, hundreds of events, dozens of research projects, and touching literally thousands of people just over the last 6 months. And for some specific examples of this, we've had people present their research at international conferences, host sometimes the universities and countries' first alternative protein symposia, brought very high-level players in for industry talks, career talks, really just all of the above. The opportunities really are endless, and the great thing about this community is that means you will have colleagues, you will have other students who have already done similar projects, and they can help you along your way. So that's a lot of why I'm excited. It's because I get to facilitate such wonderful projects. Now to talk a little bit about what we are looking for here. So first, just thinking about what universities are a good fit. And please know that all of this is kind of what we view as our standard targets. If you hear what I am saying and you think that doesn't really fit myself or my university, I urge you to not self-reject, because we are exploring bringing different kinds of institutions into our community, and we've had a lot of success with that over the past year. So I would really welcome applications from anywhere. Now, typically, we focus our efforts on research universities, just recognizing that they tend to be the best resourced and have the opportunities to address some of those core bottlenecks on alternative protein production. So often that means that we're looking for universities where students can capitalize on established mechanisms, whether that be student-led research opportunities, fellowships, and the like. And just given the state of the science, if your university is around a hub of agricultural technology, biotechnology, or manufacturing capabilities, that is an additional bonus. But really just kind of strong programs in any of the major areas of science of alternative protein development. But I want to reemphasize, like, our partner universities need to be engaged in some sort of research project or just alternative protein topics in order to be effective partners. But that really is not the same as us saying we only accept one kind of university. So again, please do not self-reject. Now, when it comes to what sort of leaders we are looking for, we do require a team of at least 2 applicants We've learned from experience that having one person start out is a surefire way to ask far too much of any one person. And frankly, the larger the team, typically the more success that you have. So we're looking for both, frankly, just to have a commitment to our shared mission. Um, and this is a student-led initiative, so we are looking for the leaders to be actively enrolled in a degree program that can be undergraduate, graduate of any sort, and are willing to dedicate at least 5 to 10 hours a week. We recognize that this is a volunteer organization and you are a student. Some of you will also have jobs. So we're not expecting a full-time or 20-hour commitment, but we want to make sure that you are able to maintain enough momentum to keep this group thriving. And at least one, which means this does not have to be true for everybody in the applicant team, should have some experience in community organizing with some other group and has either the experience or ability to, and interest to learn the fundamentals in just managing and strategic planning. Again, what we have seen from experience is that some of the hardest work that our student leaders do is building that leadership team. Because if we're working on a university level, no one or two people can do all of the work. So you need to grow that leadership team, be able to delegate and organize effectively. And that's really hard, honestly. And not everybody has that experience coming in. And we are looking for at least one applicant who is housed within a key scientific discipline of alternative proteins. Again, that means that you can be one of the primary leaders, a co-president, an applicant who is within the humanities, the business school, anywhere else. We're looking for at least one that has a representation from a scientific discipline. And we're looking for someone, at least someone who has deep familiarity with the alternative protein field. Again, if you don't have that now, that's what our website is for. Enroll in our online course and you basically will get all that you need to know. The hardest thing about our community is continuity, because in the best case scenario, everyone leaves, which is unfortunate for us, great for you because that means you're graduating and going on to bigger and better things. But for that reason, we are looking for at least one applicant to be sticking around for at least 2 years, graduating no earlier than 2027, which again also means if you are about to graduate, say this May, that's okay. You can build this team as long as you are able to bring some people on who will be around for a little bit longer. Now, when it comes to some tips for the application, just so you know what to expect, I would say if you haven't already, use this month to build your team, apply by the end of March. Then we will be, after an initial screen, inviting a select number of groups to an interview, which is very informal. It'll just be exploring more about what you are able to share on the application. And then we will have a training program that will kind of cover not necessarily the science of alternative proteins, but the skills that you will need to be effective alternative protein leaders and ambassadors in your university. And then come August, that is when we will be unveiling our new cohort to the world, and we'll be celebrating the expansion of our program. Now, speaking of deadlines, they are due at the end of March. That is the last Friday in March, March 28th. So please make sure that you get them in on time. So I've already talked about program prerequisites, but especially if you are not, if your entire application team is not here, make sure you go over them with everybody. And I mentioned our 5 programmatic objectives, but we have a deeper dive in our resource hub that explains more about what we mean by that. And it can be a great way to kind of start thinking about what sorts of projects, what sorts of initiatives and impact you would want to have on your university. And I want to highlight that we are looking for specific and personal answers. So I care a lot more about hearing what your real objectives are, like as granular as you can make it. If you have a professor that you know of, if you want to build a specific class, if there is a huge sustainability festival that you're like, I think alternative proteins belong there. We don't have anything about food there yet. That is going to be so much stronger information and an application for us than frankly, what might come across as a ChatGPT answer, where it is just explaining that you want this for a professional development opportunity, and that's it. Now, when I say that, I'm not looking for polished language, and I hope that it is slightly more personalized than an AI chatbot, I also recognize that some of you may be applying in your second, third, or fourth language because we are a community that is run in English. So please know that we do not penalize any applicants who might be writing in a second or third language. As long as you have basically enough grasp of the English language to participate in our community, that's all we need. And that's just an unfortunate necessity of how we run things. But if it takes you significantly longer to write something out, again, I don't want you to feel like you have to take that much time. Polished language is not going to be our priority here. In terms of our application process, I will be leaning on the expertise of our global team of mentors, basically to make sure that there are not any barriers to fair evaluation so that I can have at least more appropriate understanding of where any applicants are coming from. And we will also be considering geographic breakdown of our 2025 cohort, just knowing that we do not have endless capacity to bring on 50 new groups. As much as that would be wonderful, we wouldn't be able to do so. And so we'll be considering basically, trying to get the widest global representation of our 2025 cohort as well. So this information session being a great example, we tend to host community events on at least 2 times throughout the day, just recognizing that time zones will require that. So hopefully everything that we do in the community will be accessible to you, regardless of where in the world you are coming from. So looking ahead, I said, please do not self-reject, and I mean it. Part of our theory of change is that we make the biggest impact by making information openly accessible to everyone. So that includes, even if you are not selected for our 2025 cohort, I would still love to see you start a student group at your university. It doesn't have to be officially affiliated with us. In fact, some groups have done that. There is one example I am thinking of that applied and was not selected in the 2023 cohort. They started a group anyways. In 2024, they are now officially a member of the Alt Protein Project. So just to go through some frequently asked questions, as I already mentioned, having a co-founder is a requirement. Anyone in a degree program is eligible to be a student leader, and we're looking for anyone around the globe. And I highlighted where we have our regional affiliates. You do not need to be in a region where we have an affiliate. You can truly be from anywhere, and we will evaluate your application on its own merits. If you are someone who is not in a degree program, someone else from a university, or you have a faculty advisor, there is absolutely a role for you in our community. That can change depending on what your expertise is, what your role is within your university, but we always appreciate support from all sides. If you're interested in that, you can reach out to me directly. And we have other resources for faculty, for administration as well. Then, of course, there's the question of what do we actually do for you? And so I will happily get into that now. So as I already mentioned, we do have a training program at the very beginning of everybody's tenure at the Alt Protein Project, really kind of on the foundation of how you build a flourishing team and some best practices there. We'll talk about how to act with impact in mind so that you are not just organizing events, but you are doing so with a stated goal. Oh, wrong way. There we go. We'll talk about best practices on how to just generate enthusiasm and buzz in your university to get new students on board, get new faculty on board, as the like. A little bit about how to just become the resident experts, how to position yourselves within your university, largely by mapping the active players and relevant players in your university so that people start coming to you as the resident experts. And finally, all of that kind of feeds into those specific projects that you might be taking in order to help your university grow into that true hub of alternative protein development. We also, what I really view as the primary strength of our community, I don't know why those people aren't showing up. There we go. Is the fact that you do get one-on-one mentorship from our affiliates and some alumni from our program all across the globe. So we do have resources that we will then guide you through on how to build an effective strategy and action plan. Who you see here are all of our fantastic mentors that you can get that one-on-one guidance from. And frankly, all of our colleagues from across the world, across those teams, it's great that honestly, everyone at GFI loves the Alt Protein Project. They love all of the student leaders because they know all of the work that you are able to do for our shared mission. So whether they be from the science and technology team, policy, corporate engagement, communications, even more, you can also always call on them as well to just have that insider knowledge and one-on-one insight from the leading experts in the field. So just to talk a little bit more about our detailed resources, so we have guides on the state of the science and industry, that student resource hub to kind of walk you through those objectives we were talking about and the how-to of projects like building a course from the ground up or starting your own research project. And then we also have resources that are really specific towards the Alt Protein project itself. One example is case studies where we really get into the granular detail of what other groups have done. So you can kind of get a checklist on specifically what they did, like even the offices that they talked to get a certain project off the ground, which has been really helpful in spreading that impact. And other activities like mapping your university ecosystem. So when you graduate, the people that you train behind you don't have to start over, and they already know the best people to talk to and work with. We also have just ongoing community calls, trainings, and general community support. These can include like workshops to build your skills, anything from professional communication to how to navigate the policy sphere, build research projects, and sometimes just to hang out with people who like doing the same kinds of things as you. We also have a community, an online community, basically, where you can just stay informed, swap ideas, that sort of thing. And we do offer funding for our student groups, just to make sure that you can host events like this without having to pay out of your own pocket. We also have a competitive grant that are awarded to some groups for slightly larger projects as well. And some of our groups have used that to build their own course and facilitate a site visit or host their own symposium and even a research project as well. So there are lots of different opportunities to kind of use our resources to help your group take even bigger and more impactful actions. And I also just want to highlight the fact that, honestly, the Good Food Institute is a recognized brand. Everyone in the industry knows who we are. And so it really is legitimately helpful when our communications team and other media channels amplifies what you are doing. So everything from putting some student leaders on a global, literally a global stage, to amplifying student successes, highlighting your work in blogs, that can really help your exposure, both as a group and university, but also you as individuals. And this can translate into the next stages in the career, in your career. Industry professionals know us, and it is basically a pre-made endorsement to say that you are a leader in the Alt Protein project. We get inquiries from industry all the time. Some groups have formed explicit partnerships with different industry players um, because they know it is a very established and high quality talent pipeline. As of me saying this, over 120 jobs and internships have been landed by our members through their work in the Alt Protein project. One example here from a partnership that a company called Formo had with one of our groups in Europe, basically just saying that they were able to get a lot of really strong applications from master's students because that was filling a need. There wasn't really a great pipeline. And so industry players really know and appreciate our community, which means that's kind of your first foot in the door, as it were, to a lot of different opportunities. And I just kind of want to end with the fact that what makes this so great is just being able to do it with other people. That's why we call this a community. And we really lean into that. You know, many students have just talked about how much better it is to learn from each other, just stay motivated by people literally around the world. And that also means that you can have collaborative projects. One great example is last year's Alternative Protein Fellowship program that was co-hosted by many of our groups. And we've since had an international collaboration so that you are facilitating these projects with friends that like you might have never met if not for this community. And that's really one of the things that excites me most about the opportunity to work with all of you. And with that, I've basically said my piece. So hopefully you can tell how excited I am about the prospect of welcoming a lot of you into our 2025 cohort. And I'm sure I've left some questions unanswered. I have not been monitoring the chat thus far, so there might be some in there. So now I will turn it over to the Q&A session. So as a reminder, you are welcome to drop your question in the chat, and you are also welcome to unmute and ask directly. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can start talking amongst each other here, and I would love to open it up.
I have a question if no one is brave enough to
Yes,
go.
please.
Hi, I'm Eduardo. I'm based in Italy. You may remember I'm the friend of Rosa Maria Provenzale. We
Oh,
wrote
yes.
you a while ago. Yeah, yeah. So really wanted to attend this meeting. So thank you very much for explaining in detail. Most likely we will have more questions coming on once we are through the bureaucracy, let's say. But one question I wanted to have is, so you mentioned degree students, so PhD students are actually out of the picture, right?
Oh,
Or
we welcome PhD students. Yes.
okay, good,
And
good.
this is one of those things I recognize that PhD students and sometimes postdocs are treated differently in different countries, different regions around the world. So basically, if you see yourself as a student of some sort, or you are seeking a degree, that is who we are looking for. Again, please do not self-reject. The worst case scenario is we will read your application and ask, are you able to get a student in a different position along their trajectory on your application team? That's all we would be asking for.
All right, thank you. Yeah, because most of the contacts we're having are PhD level, let's say at the moment, and then they will be able to reach more master student and bachelor student people level. So yeah, but the basics will be at the PhD level because that's where we move at the moment. So thank you. Good,
Yeah,
good to know.
absolutely. And just to say to everybody, um, it's definitely not a requirement to be accepted into our program. But thinking ahead, we have seen some of our most impactful groups have a mix of both graduate and undergraduate students. For those of you who are graduate students, you probably already appreciate the fact that those two different groups of students touch different parts of the university. And if my graduate career is any indication, graduate students often are not that connected with university life because they go into lab for a very long time and then they go home. So having representation from all sides of the university can be very helpful. And yes, to clarify, we will be posting this recording tomorrow on our YouTube page, and we'll basically be tacking on the questions and answers from the next session onto it as well, so you can get even more information than what you hear today. We, of course, have a lot more time. I will also just kind of throw this to my other colleagues. I see Lorena on here as well from GFI Brazil. And if there's anything that I have missed or you would like to emphasize even more, I would love for you to bring up any of those topics too.
Nathan, I think you covered so much in such an impressive fashion. So I'm trying to think of what I would emphasize of what you've already said. And I think for me, it's that like personal touch on your application answers and specificity. Not that you need to have already laid out like a specific plan of who you've already talked to, of faculty members or what research has already begun, but even we would love to just see your vision. It doesn't have to mean that you're already connected with that faculty member, but even connecting the dots of like this faculty member has a lab where they are already working on life cycle assessments. And so, what if we could apply that to alternative proteins? Or this lab and faculty member are already working on tissue engineering. What if we could apply that to this part of alternative proteins? So it's not binding. This isn't you promising that that professor will do that research, but we love to see when you have really thought about what already exists at your university and your in your ecosystem and how to fold alternative proteins into that. Because we even encourage existing alt protein project students to work within their university ecosystem, which means that you're playing into your strengths and you're also acknowledging where maybe your efforts aren't as valuable. So if you know that your university is really strong in policy, we would love to see that as well. And you don't have to fit a mold that you think that we have. We just love to see that you're considering the details of who your university is and how that can contribute to such an interdisciplinary field such as alternative proteins.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, Hannah. And for the first year, actually, on our application page, if you have not seen this already, we do have two sample applications posted from groups that were successful because they are now part of our community to just kind of highlight what we're kind of talking about in that respect. There is one example from a group that basically already had a bunch of alternative protein research. They already had an active group there, but that is not what we require or expect. We have another example as well where our student applicants were really the first movers in alternative proteins at their university as a whole. So depending on where you are coming from, one might be more relevant than the other. So while you are thinking about any additional questions that you have, I wanted to drop this feedback form. You'll see that in the chat. I would love, even as we are still on the call, for you to just kind of go through. I am always looking to make these sorts of presentations and our resources in general as effective as possible. So I would love any sort of thoughts you're willing to provide there. I will give one more call for questions, and this can be as specific about your personal situation, your university situation, or general about our community, our resources, anything that might have come up.
Hi,
Use,
I think we actually have one question
Oh,
that came in from Anna. Anna asked, could you please shortly list possible motivations that one can use to engage science students to join APP, specifically maybe molecular biology?
that's fantastic. I'm happy to take that, but also given the fact that I have three of our wonderful mentors on the call, if any of you would like to talk about kind of strategies that you have given to your existing groups.
Yeah, I'd be happy to share a little bit. This is a really great question, Anna, and I can tell you're already thinking about maybe even recruitment, which is one of the key components of building a strong alt protein project leadership team and also a student community around alt proteins at your university. And I think specifically in terms of alternative proteins, we're quite lucky in the sense that there are so many different cause areas that alternative proteins can address. And so for a lot of students that are focused on molecular biology, chemistry, maybe they're interested in health, maybe they're interested in the environment. There are so many different kind of reasons why people are in the sciences. And I do think it can be really helpful to, as Hannah was mentioning, connecting the dots for students who are, maybe they're learning about alternative proteins, but don't quite understand how their skill set can apply to alternative proteins. So this is actually something we help you with in the training program, is how to be that connector of the dots, how to articulate to students who are studying biology or chemistry how their skills can apply directly to helping the environment, helping animals, helping human health, biodiversity, things like that. And I think also focusing on what skills students already do have. And so maybe you are a molecular biology student yourself and thinking about the things that you want to have an impact on. So really speaking from your own personal experience can really energize other students as well.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you, Asia. And I also want to emphasize that sometimes it's just people are drawn in by the really cool science. It just on its face, molecular biology, synthetic biology, there's a lot of really cool things happening right now. And I know some of our active student leaders were first drawn in just by the research project of it all, not necessarily the cause area. And of course, we take all sorts. And that goes also into the next question that I see, asking if there's a strategic reason why the Alt Protein Project doesn't emphasize animal welfare as a core driver. And that, honestly, was mainly just an oversight on my end, because there are so many cause areas that alternative proteins directly contribute to. As an example, I pulled up another slide that I often share when I give talks and presentations, which kind of highlights the 4 primary areas, which are not all-inclusive, that alternative proteins contribute to. And I always start with animal suffering, because, as I'm sure many of you are aware, the billions of animals, including trillions of fish, are dedicated towards human consumption every year, and many of which are in incredibly terrible living conditions. And that is a motivator for many of our students, for many of our donors, for many of our community in general, and entrepreneurs as well. So for the sake of what I said here, it was basically just because there are a lot and I didn't mention all of them, and that is my mistake. And then part of what we help in terms of training, when we're talking about being the most effective messengers, is identifying which of those cause areas are the most helpful to focus on, depending on the audience that you are speaking to. Because there will be many people where animal welfare is going to be the driving motivation. And the biggest benefit of alternative proteins means we need fewer animal lives dedicated towards the food system. There will be others where environmental welfare is the most pressing need, that recognizing the pollution, the greenhouse gas emissions, how many of those can be reduced is going to be the biggest driver. There will be others that will be biosecurity risk. There will be others that will be just general food security, especially depending on the country that they are coming from. So all of those are inclusive, and that's why you can also recruit, as Asia and Hannah were saying, from a lot of different areas, whether that be, traditional like animal rights organizations, effective altruism, sustainability organizations. The one thing that I always like emphasizing here is, given our theory of change at GFI, we definitely hold the philosophy of inviting everybody to the table. And in this context, that means that, at GFI and then for the alt protein project as well, we do work with, meat producers. We work with people who are primary players in the food industry, recognizing that that is where systemic change will be coming from. So while we definitely appreciate and emphasize the focus on animal welfare and rights, we also don't really position ourselves in kind of the more traditional, like animal rights vegan movements just because of who we are working with. So that is a tough nuance to play, and it takes a lot of experience as well, which is why we work together on building that. For all of these questions, if we don't fully answer them, please ask follow-ups. I'm seeing another one here from a chemical engineer taught biochem engineering, biotech applications. Can I fit in? Absolutely, everybody can fit in. So you seem like someone, if you are currently teaching, you are the exact kind of person that we like having in our community to really help be that bridge between student activity and what those actions might be able to be at a university. So if you are affiliated with a university, as an example, one, for this specific initiative, I would say find those students who are in your classes that are really motivated to help contribute to this cause. And then whether you are able to get an active group out of it or not, having faculty champions at universities really are the difference between groups that are able to just kind of be those more typical awareness groups and those that can leave a profound impact on their university. So there's absolutely a way that you can fit in. Oh, so I got another message about someone who is in the food science realm and what types of projects what types of proteins the project is interested in. So in terms of application, that kind of comes back to the three pillars of production that we talked about. So those would be plant-based proteins, proteins cultivated from animal cells, and proteins derived from fermentation. So that can be biomass fermentation, precision fermentation as well. If those topics or if those terms are new to you, again, that's what our website is for. Frankly, that's how I learned them at first. But it really is then for application, any food product that would replicate traditional animal eggs, meat, and dairy. If there's additional questions and nuance you have, you're welcome to ask. Let's see. Compare starting something more targeted towards a social movement versus something with broader focus, like effective altruism. That's a great question. And often that depends on the ecosystem you are coming from. I will say that many of our student groups in the Alt Protein Project came directly from effective altruism. So if you are active in the effective altruism movement, maybe in your university student group there, you'll know that alternative proteins and animal welfare are one of the cause areas of effective altruism, recognizing kind of the multifactorial benefits that it does provide for biosecurity, which is a little more existential, environmental stability as well. And so it really is just, do you want to be more of a generalist or more of a specialist? Sometimes that can be dependent on what university you are in. If you don't have really any activity, if you're, for instance, in a smaller university and there's nothing food related going on, maybe it is more effective to stay more general and just make sure that alternative proteins are a part of the conversation. That said, this has again happened with some of our groups. A lot of our groups started more general, brought food and alternative proteins specifically into the conversation to the point that even professors in anthropology, professors in history, what are some other examples? Social psychology and choice architecture get interested enough in alternative proteins that it then makes sense to have a more specific focus. So again, if that's something you're interested in exploring, I would say still send your application in and we can talk about what those different opportunities might be. All right, I'll say Last call for questions again, and maybe we'll get 5 more. I don't know. Okay, well, I'm going to start closing out, and then if other things come up, I can be interrupted again. Totally fine with that. But I just want to reiterate, first of all, thank you for being here. You being here shows me that you are already wanting to make these really important changes in our food system at your university, and you're kind of proving that you are mission aligned just by being here. So I appreciate the questions. Hopefully you all, I always hope that you kind of see this open door. You're always welcome to ask additional questions. And we will be posting this recording so you can share this with a friend, your co-application team, or just watch it again. And I really hope to see your application come in the coming weeks. Our goal is to make this process as open and inclusive as possible. So if there is anything that you have questions about, again, please reach out to me directly. Because whether your primary motivation is just the scientific advancement, our environment, public health, animal welfare, there is a home for you here. And I'm excited just about the fact that you want to be leveraging the power and promise of alt proteins to make the world a better place. That in and of itself is enough to make me want to read your application. So thanks again, everyone, and I really look forward to growing with you in this space. Hopefully we'll talk soon. Take care.
Thank you so much for your patience as I went through a lot of information with a lot of words on the screen. But yeah, I would love to open it up for any questions, any thoughts that you have.
Just wanted to say thank you, Asia, for taking the time to take with us through that. That was it was a really good overview. To be honest, you've covered all the questions that I had. I mean, my main questions were going to be around the support throughout the year that you would get, but yeah, just knowing that there's the mentorship there, and then the ability to connect, monthly, regionally, internationally with like other student groups and other leaders is really interesting. I think for me personally, because I'm a master's student, it's just looking and finding some co-founders is like my main mission going forward. And because I'm working in the policy space, getting somebody who's like a scientific major, that's like obviously a big learning for me today to go and spend the next few weeks to go and find that. But thank you, and no real questions from me.
Amazing. That means the slide deck was comprehensive if there are not too many questions, but I'm so glad to hear that it was really informative. And yeah, definitely if there's any way that we can help to support you as you're, kind of looking throughout your ecosystem for co-organizers or just thinking about this, feel free to reach out if any questions do pop up, because I know that always happens to me where I think of questions later on as I'm working on things. But yeah, lovely to meet you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Amazing.
I would like to thank you, Joe. That was really very clarifying. No questions from my side either. My homework now is pass this along for my post-graduation program here. We have a lot of studies. We are quite involved in tissue engineering here. I think it's the most probable interface we have in the team here. And they will be thrilled in joining this program. I bet they will. Thank you for having me. I'm glad I took the time to be here at 10 p.m. It was very, very, very qualified. Thank you.
Amazing. I'm so glad it was worth staying up a little bit later. I know that I would be very sleepy at 10 p.m. So thanks for joining us. And yeah, please do relay this information to the other students. And if they have any questions, feel free to put them in touch with myself or Hannah or Nathan. We have our alt protein project at gfi.org email, which is a way to reach all 3 of us. So somebody will get back to you is my main point if you have any questions. Amazing. Okay, well, with that, if there are no other questions, feel free to follow up afterwards. And we really are excited to receive your applications, really excited to review them. And yeah, thank you so much for being here.